So JB Fonlois is at it again. This time he is platforming Zionist and war criminal Tariq Shabazz.
Not just what they've done in Gaza, but for also what they have done in Lebanon. And so this is turning it.
Remember when we called out JB Fonlois for platforming Zionist settlers and pushing the LGBTQ agenda? Well, he's platforming a Zionist war criminal who looks like a circus clown again.
Into, or dare I say, we're already in a World War III. It's just you don't really know the name of it until after the fact.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I would say, yeah. I mean, I looked at numerous reports a couple years, not a couple years, but a year ago, when you see multiple countries that are talking about the importance of having their militaries be operational, or at least they could be fully optimized by like 2027. When you hear things like that, I mean, we know that's the war efforts are ratcheting up, and then we're seeing actual hot conflict, right? For hot, we see that there's actual physical conflict. People are dying. Human beings are losing their lives. And then we also have to take into account the other things that happen as a result of of war. Is how many individuals who are on long-term healthcare or healthcare related support that now they may not be able to get those critical supplies. Now we take into account, like when we look into Gaza, right? That the state of Israel, its government was...
Look, red flag number one, platforms a Zionist entity. Uses the Zionist name of the Zionist entity. No, it's the Zionist entity and it's Palestine from the river to the sea. I'm actually from occupied 1948 Palestine. My entire maternal lineage, haplogroup L, is from occupied 1948 Palestine. I got roots in Isfia. I have roots in Dalit al-Carmel, Haifa, Fahm, Majid al-Krum, Der Hanna, places like that, right? Akka, I have some family in Akka as well. So again, this man is whitewashing the genocide of Palestinians in occupied 1948 Palestine when he uses the Zionist name of the Zionist entity.
Still blocking aid is going in. So that is going to cause, an immense number of other deaths that occur. That is not directly through by way of the arms that were used. This is other areas of the war that happens, right? When you block people from receiving resources like that, that's going to cause more deaths. That's going to cause death tolls to increase, and that is something that needs to be taken into account. That the state of Israel wasn't just indiscriminate in its pathways of what it was doing. It was very deliberate. It's harming them, the civilians. It's directly harming them, and they're aware of it. And on the next step about that, it's one of those areas where, for us as citizens, we have to take into account, how do you get to this point? It's because of the point that I made earlier, that we have rising super political action committees that are working for the better good of another country, right? Foreign interests. They should, like AIPAC is a political action committee, super PAC, that should be recognized as a foreign super PAC, right? It's directly advocating and coming to our country and getting all of our leaders. I don't know what kind of dirt they have on all of these people, but I mean, they're lock in step with almost everything that they want, and it's disgusting.
Yeah. So would you be willing to either sponsor or draft legislation that would force AIPAC to register as a foreign agent?
What about banning all Zionist groups and all Zionist individuals from donating money? What about that? What about banning all political donations and banning lobbying in the first place?
Elected senator?
Yes, and that's something I've touched on within this year as well. That I would absolutely do that, because I believe AIPAC is what it is. I mean, we know it's foreign. It's working as a foreign agent on behalf of the state of Israel.
Why are you calling the Zionist entity by its Zionist name and thus erasing Palestinians from occupied 1948 Palestine? Why are you doing that? I'm Palestinian. I'm from occupied 1948 Palestine.
It's bribing politicians to literally just look the other way, give us more money, and we'll do whatever we want. And all you have to say is that you will always defend us. You will always support our right to defend ourselves. And I served in the U.S. Navy, and I still call out.
So this man was a war criminal. This man is involved in organized crime. The U.S. Navy is an organized crime. It's a criminal syndicate. And so he's got blood on his hands.
The fact that our U.S. military it violates internationally, right?
Again, international law is inherently Zionist, right? The UN is inherently Zionist, and international law must be abolished, and the UN must be abolished.
Imperialism is something I call out all the time. So why would I not call out a state of Israel when I didn't even
So why is he using the Zionist name of the Zionist entity?
serve it? And I'm not a citizen of that state. I don't understand what's happening here by so many of our public officials, elected officials. It is really illustrating that something very sinister is happening beneath the surface, and it's not being addressed publicly.
Yeah, I honestly personally would say that everybody who gets money from any of the Israel PACs are compromised, but that's me.
Ironically, J.B. Fonlois, for platforming Zionists, he is compromised himself.
He's saying that, not you. So I just wanted to clarify. So moving on, you say that you also support the diplomatic relations within the region that has strategic plan for peace, to end the apartheid, the establishment of a two-state solution recognizing Israel and Palestine, which...
So here we go. Strategical plan for peace to end the apartheid. This man doesn't even talk, Tariq Shabazz doesn't even talk about settler colonialism. He's too chicken to say the word settler colonialism. Establishment of a two-state solution. Well, geez Louise, the two-state solution's inherently Zionist. Occupied 1948 Palestine, which is where I'm from originally, which is where my entire maternal lineage, my mom, my grandma, my great-grandma, my mom's side, half of my mom's side's Palestinian, right? This man, Tariq Shabazz, supports ethnic cleansing and genocide in occupied 1948 Palestine. I want my land back, dickhead. Give me my fucking land back, dickhead. Palestine, occupied 1948 Palestine, belongs to Palestinians. It belongs to me. It belongs to my family, my mom, my uncles, my mom's nephews, my younger brother. It belongs to all my grandma's family. I am Palestinian.
I know that a lot of the Palestinian resistance actually supported for the most part.
That's actually false. PIJ opposes a two-state solution, and PIJ supports Palestine from the river to the sea. And
this is a tough one, right? This is a tough one because the question is, how do you end the situation?
It's easy. You arrest every single Zionist settler. You extradite them to their countries of origin. And you prosecute them and incarcerate them. It's easy. So again, this man, Tariq Shabazz, he's a liberal Zionist. J.B. Fonlois, he is a liberal Zionist.
Right? For me, again, you can't go back to, as they say, prior to October 7th, right?
How about let's go back to prior to 1872, dickhead. How about we go back to, 1871, 1870, where Palestine, but without the presence of the Ottoman Turks, right? So when we want a Palestine for Palestinians, ruled by Palestinians. That's what we want.
2024. You still have to take into account that there was a vicious occupation that was occurring for you.
Not just occupation, ethnic cleansing, settler colonialism, genocide, foreign invasion.
Years prior, right?
And the settler colonialism started in none other than 1872. This man is a circus clown. This man is a Zionist circus clown. And there's further evidence that this man, Tariq Shabazz, is a Zionist. So this man, he took down his campaign website, but he uses Wix. So Wix is a Zionist company. Many people are not aware that Wix is a Zionist company. respect the boycott of the Zionist entity and use a better website builder. So why is there a boycott on the Zionist entity? And it talks about BDS, right? So boycotts involve withdrawing from the Zionist entity's settler colonial scheme and anything complicit with the Zionist entity. And then why you should boycott Wix. Wix is a large publicly traded company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. As a website building service, Wix relies on free access to the internet and access to startup capital that Palestinians under Zionist occupation are denied. Just a short drive away from Wix headquarters at the Tel Aviv airport, overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, are Palestinian communities with poor or no access to the internet, and that are banned from visiting the same beaches their parents and grandparents went to enjoy freely. It is important for people around the world to show solidarity with the Palestinian people and boycott anything that's remotely linked to the Zionist entity. Fortunately, there are high-quality alternatives to Wix that you can use to manage a website for yourself, your organization, or your business. There are now a lot of options for setting up and maintaining a website. While Wix promotes its user-friendly interface, they are not alone in offering a drag-and-drop website builder tool. In fact, there are far better alternatives, such as WordPress, Squarespace. I like to joke that's the Norwegians' favorite website because Square, get it? Squarehead. Shopify, Weebly. So this man, he is a liberal Zionist and a circus clown from flyover country. This man is a Zionist circus clown from DeSantis Disneyland. And decolonization is not a complicated process. Here's what Ebb Magazine has to say. So let's talk about the settler-native relationship, because that's something that these two circus clowns, these myostatin deficient circus clowns, they don't really understand, right? And I obviously understand it as a Palestinian. J.B. Fontloy plays a lot of rhetorical and symbolic words and gestures to settler colonialism. But again, this man doesn't really understand it because he platforms Zionist settlers because they're LGBTQ, and he pushes the LGBTQ agenda. So a liberation movement, given the implications of defining anti-Zionism, we must reorient ourselves. Let's see. So anti-Zionist organizing is not a new notion, but until now, the use of the term in organizing circles has been mired to misunderstandings, vague definitions, and minimized outright. Some have incorrectly described anti-Zionism as activities or thought limited to the critiques of present Zionist government. This is a dangerous misrepresentation. Understanding anti-Zionism as anti-Zionism as decolonization requires the articulation of a political movement with material calculated goals, the restitution of ancestral territories, and upholding the inviolable principle of indigenous repatriation through the right of return, coupled with the deconstruction of the Zionist structures and reconstitution of governing frameworks that are conceived, directed, and implemented by Palestinians. So Palestine for Palestinians by Palestinians. Again, if I get the opportunity, I will run for mayor of Al-Fahim, Majid al-Krum, Haifa, Isfia, Akka, when Palestine is liberated from the river to the sea. Once Palestine is liberated, I will be moving to Palestine, to a region where my family is from originally, and I will be running for mayor in a village or a city over there, back home. Anti-Zionism illuminates the necessity, but liberation must obviously happen first, right? Because now everything's controlled by Zionist collaborators or Zionist settlers themselves, and liberation must happen. Arrests, extradition, prosecution, and incarceration of Zionist settlers must happen first. That's step number one. And that all starts with armed resistance. And I support PIJ. I support Hamas, but I support PIJ a lot more than I support Hamas. I'm going to be honest with you about that. I think Hamas has capitulated to the Zionists a little bit. I think PIJ is just stronger in their values. Obviously, they're Palestinian and Islamic, and obviously PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, much more compatible with my values. So anti-Zionism necessitates the return to power to the indigenous community and the need for frameworks and accountability for the settler communities that have waged a bloody, unrelenting 300-year war on the people of Palestine. Because settler colonialism started in 1872. It means that anti-Zionism is more than a slogan. So given the implications of defining anti-Zionism, we must reorient ourselves around it within the framework of a liberation movement. This emphasizes the strategic importance of control over the narrative and principles of anti-Zionism in the global decolonial efforts. As Steven Saleta, who I have mixed opinions about, upon finding out that he's Facebook friends with Yuri Horesh, he's Facebook friends with Mitchell Plitnick. Again, I have mixed opinions. Like, why are you collaborating with Zionist settlers? He's Facebook friends with David Sheen. Dude, what are you doing being Facebook friends with literal Zionist settlers? But again, he's from a Palestinian Christian background. I'm from a Palestinian Muslim background. So there's a little bit of a difference there. We're just built different. As Steven Saleta points out, and Hamas is a figment of your imagination, Zionism and liberal Zionism come into the influence the shape of the Palestinian resistance. Zionists have a rhetorical type of control in the public sphere. They get to determine the culture of the native. They get to prescribe and proscribe the contours of our resistance. They get to adjudicate the work of national liberation. Palestinians are entrapped by the crude and self-serving imagination of the oppressor. We have to wrestle back the right to narration and can use anti-Zionist thought as a guide for liberation. We must reclaim anti-Zionist praxis from those who would only use it as a headline in a fundraising email, such as the Green Party, such as the Democrat Party, such as JVP, If Not Now, Na'amud, Breaking the Silence, B'Tselem, the Jewish Center for Nonviolence, the Alaska Native Movement, the NDN Collective. Oh, I'm on a roll. Revolutionary Blackout Network, for example. So while our collective imaginations have not fully articulated what a liberated and decolonized Palestine looks like, the rough contours have been laid out repeatedly. Ask any Palestinian displaced from Haifa, like myself, the lands of Sheikh Muanis or Der Yassin, they will tell you that a decolonized Palestine is at a minimum the right of Palestinians return to an autonomous political unit from the river to the sea, and extradition, prosecution, and incarceration of every single settler, every single one that is alive. When self-proclaimed anti-Zionists use rhetoric like Israel-Palestine or worse, Palestine-Israel, we wonder, where do you think Israel exists? On which land does it lay if not Palestine? This is nothing more than an attempt to legitimize a colonial state. The name you are looking for is Palestine, no hyphen required. At a minimum, anti-Zionist formations should cut out that language that forces upon Palestinians and non-Palestinian allies the violence of colonial theft. Understanding the settler-native relationship is essential in anti-Zionist organizing. It means confronting the settler designation in Zionist settler colonialism and class status, indicating one's place in a larger settler colonial systems of power. Anti-Zionist discourse should critically challenge the Zionist reframing of history through colonial instruments such as the Oslo Accords and an over-reliance on international law frameworks, which is what Tariq Shabazz does, through which they differentiate Israeli settlers in Tel Aviv and those in the West Bank settlements. While suggesting that some Israeli cities are settlements, while others are not, perpetuates Zionist framing, granting legitimacy to colonial control, to arbitrary political divisions of Palestine, and further dividing the land into disparate zones. Anti-Zionist analysis understands that settlers are not only residents of illegal West Bank settlements like Kiryat Arba and Efrat, but also those in Safaa and Petah Tikva. Ask any Palestinian who's living in exile from Haifa, like me, my family's from the Haifa Governorate, from four different towns actually in the Haifa Governorate. They will tell you that the Zionist settlers living in their homes are also settlers. The common choice to center the Oslo Accords, international humanitarian law, and the human rights paradigm over socio-historical Palestinian realities not only limits our analysis and political interventions, it restricts our imagination of what kind of future Palestinians deserve, sidelining questions of decolonization to convince us that it is the new bad settlers in the West Bank who are the source of violence. Legitimate settlers who reside within the bounds of Palestinian geographies stolen in 1948, like Tel Aviv and West Qudus, are different within this narrative. Like breaking the silence, they can be enlightened by learning the error of colonial violence carried out in the service of bad settlers. They can supposedly be our solidarity partners, all without having to sacrifice a crumb of colonial privilege or denounce pre-1967 Zionist violence in any of its cruel manifestations. As a result of this course of thought, solidarity organizations often showcase particular Zionist settlers: Miko Peled, Ilan Pape, Elon Mizrahi, David Sheen, people like Jessica Buchsbaum, people of that nature who are Zionist settlers: Amira Haas, Hadass Thier. I can go on and on. Yuval Abraham, Nathaniel Flaken. I can go on and on naming these settlers and grifters, platform settlers. Those who were Jeff Halper, Yuri Avneri, those who renounce state violence in service of the bad settlers and their ongoing colonization in the West Bank, in roles as professionals and peacemakers. Gideon Levy, for example, positioning them on equal intellectual, moral, or class footing with Palestinians. There is no recognition to the inherent imbalance of powers between the Zionist settlers and the Palestinians they purport to be in solidarity with, stripping away their settler status. The settler is taken out of the historical political context, which afforded them privileged status on stolen land, and is given the power to delineate Palestinian experience. This is a historical occlusion of the Zionist narrative, overlooking the context of settler colonialism to read the settler as an individual and omitting their class status as a settler. Right? So, again, it is important to note that Palestinians have never rejected Jewish indigeneity in Palestine, which is literally only 6%, 2% of the population. Palestinians have established a clear rational framework for this distinction, like in the Al-Thawabet, the National Chapter of Palestine from 1968. Article 6 says, the Jews who had normally resided in Palestine until the beginning of the Zionist invasion. By the way, the Zionist invasion began in 1872, will be considered Palestinians. So Zionist settlers must be extradited, right? So it's Palestine from the river to the sea. And this is something J.B. Font-Leroy is guilty of. The Zionist version of all lives matter, right? And this also says, anti-Zionism cannot shy away from employing the historical political definitions of settler and indigenous in their discourse to confront ahistorical readings of Palestinian decolonial thought and Zionist propaganda. And honestly, some groups in Palestine, specifically the socialists, have a history of Zionist normalization, and this is why I'm more side with PIJ. They've watered down what it means to actually be decolonial and liberation and stuff. And we see a lot that we see that frequently with people from the West Bank, Qudus, Ramallah, people who are Palestinian Christians to a certain extent. Although you see it with some Palestinian Muslims like Muin Rabani. But there's certain segments, the Fateh grifters, so like Saib Arakat, Noda Arakat, these grifters, you see that with them, and these are also the same Palestinians who do platform Zionist settlers. The Zionist version of all lives matter. As we see, the settler colonialism secures the position of the settler, imbuing them with rights, in this case, a divine right of conquest. As such, Zionism ensures the settlers' rights to supersede those of indigenous people at the latter's expense. Knowing this, the liberal slogan of equal rights for all requires deeper consideration. Rather than replacing the emphasis on the deconstruction of the settler state and the violence inherent to it, which eternally serves the settler to the direct detriment of the indigenous communities, the slogan suggests that Palestinians simply need to secure more rights within the violent system. But equal rights, in the sense that those chanting this phrase mean, will not come from attempts to rehabilitate a settler state. They can only be ensured through the decolonization of Palestine, through the material restitution of land and resources. Without further discussion, the slogan simply serves as another mechanism of Zionism, one that maintains the right of the settler, rather than de-emphasizing the need to restore rights to indigenous communities who have long been the victims of settlers' rights. Anti-Zionists cannot both denounce settler colonialism and Zionism and center the advocacy on the claim that settlers should have immutable, equal rights. Zionists, which have you believe that their state has always existed, that Zionist settlers always lived on the land, but a brief reference to recent history reminds us that anti-Zionism must confront the ongoing mechanisms materially advancing the development of colonies in Palestine. In 2022 alone, Zionist institutions invested almost $100 million, transferring some 60,000 new settlers from Russia, Eastern Europe, the United States, and France to help secure a demographic majority and ensure a physical presence on indigenous lands. This only happens by maintaining the forced displacement of Palestinians and by violently displacing them anew, as we see on a daily basis across the rural West Bank. There is no legitimacy in the question that these settlers have a right. There's no moral legitimacy in the question that these settlers have a right to live on stolen Palestinian land, the theft maintained by force, as long as there has been no restoration of Palestinian rights. In other words, every single settler from the river to the sea must be arrested, extradited to their countries of origin, prosecuted, and incarcerated. That's what must happen. No theories of justice exist in mainstream ethical or philosophical discourse that advocate for a person who has stolen something to rightfully keep what they have taken. The act of theft, by definition, violates basic principles of theories of justice, which emphasize fairness, equitable distribution of resources, and respect for individual rights and properties. Reminding people that decolonization is not a metaphor, some Zionist settlers like Nadav Gazit and Yulia Benilovsky, again, I will never have a Zionist settler on my show, even if they withdraw their Zionist citizenship, have taken the initiative to tangibly support Palestinian liberation and renounce their claim to settler citizenship. It's good that they withdrew their settler citizenship and renounced their citizenship, but they're still settlers. They still have blood on their hands, right? They still have blood on their hands. When liberal NGOs champion equal rights for all people, with no further discussion of what this means, it is the Zionist version of all lives matter, perpetuating or at best failing to question the maintenance of systems of violence against Palestinians. Having laid out some of the foundational concepts pertaining to Zionism and anti-Zionism, we can explore some essential strategies of anti-Zionist organizing. Right? So what else does these myostatin deficient Southern circus clowns say?
Where you had just a few years ago, Gaza had 3 million people. Then it went down to 2 million people, right? And then in the sense of it can't just, we go back to normalizing the situation.
Normalizing what situation? Normalizing. Be specific, dude. Normalizing. We can't go back to normalize. I think what he means is we can't go back to normalizing the Zionist entity. So then if he opposes normalizing the Zionist entity, why is he pushing a two-state solution? When my literal family is from occupied 1948 Palestine. 95% of my family in Balad Sham is Palestinian. The other 5% is Lebanese. My haplogroup is L. My maternal haplogroup is L. That is a Palestinian haplogroup. My entire maternal lineage is descended from Palestinian Sunni Muslims from the Haifa and Akka governorates and other parts of occupied 1948 Palestine. How can this man call for a two-state solution at the expense of me and my family? And they say this situation can't go back to what it was before October 7th. This man is a circus clown.
The state of Israel must be held.
And notice how he uses the Zionist name of the Zionist entity instead of calling it the Zionist entity.
Accountable in the international bodies.
And notice his reliance on framework of international law, right? Where is this at?
Institutions. If not, then maybe that's not what people are aiming for. Then maybe it's just simply rights, under securing rights under the colonial or violent system, right? But also, generally, these are big questions of can international law be emancipatory for people who are colonized? This is a big question for people. Can we see international law being emancipatory or an emancipatory tool, right? We here at the Good Shepherd Collective, we don't see that. It's not just about the legacy. It's about how it addressed the Palestine question, how it will continuously address the Palestine question. We understand and we really respect all of the work that different global South countries and states have been doing, to support Palestinians. That is obviously genuine solidarity, but we also have to be realistic that there's all of this effort that's being done for the symbolic, and the real life praxis of decolonization has happened and started in October 7th, and now is being left to go in a sort of unknown area. Nobody wants to talk about
an unknown direction,
or to become taboo, as we've previously discussed. So international law is tricky, and I'm very even if I study international law, and even in Laura, as she said, she studied international law, we're very critical of it, and its usability and utility in the Palestine question.
Much appreciated. Yeah. So I think that, and I messed this up and started to say this earlier.
So again, international law is Zionist. So why is this myostatin deficient circus clown from flyover country talking about international law?
I will, as a senator, work directly, whatever through my powers, to make sure that on the international body that we recognize that the state of Israel was committing to.
Notice how he normalizes with his words the Zionist entity. Notice that? This man is a liberal Zionist. Tariq Shabazz is a liberal Zionist, and he does not represent the Ummah.
Terrorism, has committed terrorism, has committed genocide. So wherever that leads to, whether that's potential shifts in governmental leaders and arrest for some.
The shift in government that needs to happen is Palestinian control of all of Palestine from the river to the sea. Tariq Shabazz tries to act like Netanyahu and his associates are an anomaly, when it's every single Zionist settler that is guilty. Every single Zionist settler needs to be arrested. Every single Zionist settler needs to be extradited to their countries of origin. Every single Zionist settler needs to be prosecuted and put in prison for life sentences.
Or certain individuals like Netanyahu, I'm in support of his arrest. I believe it was.
So are you the supportive of the arrest of, say, Miko Peled, Ilan Pape, Elon Mizrahi, Jeff Halper, David Sheen, Jessica Buchsbaum? Are you supportive of their arrests? Are you supportive of the arrest of Yuri Avneri? Are you supportive of the arrest of Adam Ruskin and his son, and David Ruskin, and Liz Ruskin? Are you supportive of their arrests? Are you supportive of the arrest of Nathaniel Flaken, of the arrest of Yuval Abraham, and their subsequent extradition? Are you supportive of the arrest and subsequent extradition of Ofer Kasif? Are you supportive of arresting and extraditing and prosecuting and incarcerating every single Zionist settler? Or are you a liberal Zionist who believes that Netanyahu and his associates are an anomaly? Are you supportive of the arrest of Ruben Amistilevsky, whatever that Diamond Mall Zionist grifter guy is?
Actually reprehensible that he's came to the United States of America, was basically.
Again, this is the type of person that liberal Zionist Tariq Shabazz is, right? He's a two-stater. He acts as if Netanyahu's an anomaly, right? Anti-Zionist organizing is not a new notion, but until now, the use of the term in organizing circles has been mired in misunderstandings, vague definitions, or minimized outright. Some have incorrectly described anti-Zionism as amounting to activities or thought limited to the critiques of the present-day Zionist regime. This is a dangerous misrepresentation. Understanding anti-Zionism as decolonization requires the articulation of a political movement with material articulated goals, the restitution of ancestral territories, and upholding the inviolable principle of indigenous repatriation, and through the right of return coupled with the deconstruction of Zionist structures and the reconstitution of governing frameworks that are conceived, directed, and implemented by Palestinians for Palestinians. Again, Tariq Shabazz is a liberal Zionist.
Given the red carpet, come into our country and speak with such conviction regarding the matters as if that he's on the right side of history, and then also to go and parade it again on the international body, where
Notice his over-reliance of international law. Again, Tariq Shabazz is a Zionist.
he has,
J.B. Font-Leroy is also a liberal Zionist.
warrants for him. I mean, it's. Sorry.
No, I feel you, and
This sly, cunning, manipulative, Southern circus clown, liberal Zionist, that's what J.B. Font-Leroy is at the end of the day.
to be honest with you, I actually agree with your frustration and anger in regards to this subject, because honestly, I am sick and tired of seeing the carnage that has been done to people within the region, because you have a genocidal maniac like Benjamin Netanyahu, who
So it's not just Netanyahu, but Font-Leroy is trying to act as if Netanyahu is an anomaly.
continues
Font-Leroy is a liberal Zionist.
his project of Greater Israel in order to just take over the region. And I spoke about this before, but if you actually if people actually Google about Israel, really the UN finding that they have billions of tons of liquefied natural gas as well as oil off the coast of Gaza, and as well as the Greater Israel Project and the plan to build a Ben Gurion Canal, then you realize that this more has to do with just money and resources than it ever has to do with anything religious at all. Because to be honest with you, this is not anything about religion. This is pure settler colonialism. Basically what happens here on this land and what the United States has done throughout the global South, particularly in Africa. So
this myostatin deficient circus clown is now only mentions settler colonialism after he's promoted settlers and platform settlers. Let's look at his channel, right? The myostatin deficient liberal Zionist Southern circus clown from DeSantis Disneyland. So check it.
LGBTQ people.
This man promotes the LGBTQ agenda and platforms and promotes LGBTQ Zionist settlers. And I told him, I said, quit normalizing Zionist settlers. Settlers are settlers no matter what. Again, this is going on as permanent record. This is evidence that reactionary bootlicker J.B. Font-Leroy, the myostatin deficient circus clown from DeSantis Disneyland, is a Zionist cuck.
Did you know
He's a Zionist subversive?
some of them are actually LGBTQ themselves?
Again, the LGBTQ agenda, the Zionist normalization, this guy's evil. So, and we talked about the settler-native relationship. We talked about, and even after there's been restoration of Palestinian rights and Palestinian sovereignty, I will do everything in my power to ban every single Zionist settler from remaining in Palestine. I will do everything in my power to extradite, to arrest, extradite, prosecute, and incarcerate every single Zionist settler. Okay? So here's our structural changes to support liberation. Anti-Zionism necessitates the systematic dismantling of Zionist structures. This process may include educational programs and protests which serve as foundational activities. However, it is essential to be cautious of organizing spaces and activities that become comfort zones for activists, lacking the necessary risk and meaningful challenges to existing structures of Zionist violence. So groups like the Alaska Native Movement, JVP, If Not Now, NDN Collective, just to name a few, those are Zionist gatekeepers, those are Zionist subversives. PSL, for example, they're also liberal Zionists. They're funded by China, which is the largest source of imports to the Zionist entity and second largest trading partner of the Zionist entity. So anti-Zionism necessitates the dismantling of Zionist structures. This process may include educational programs, teach-ins, and protests which serve as foundational activities. However, it is essential to be cautious of organizing spaces and activities that become comfort zones for activists, lacking the necessary risk and meaningful challenges to existing structures of Zionist violence. Anti-Zionist organizing must involve strategic policy and legal reform that support decolonization from afar, such as targeting laws that enable international charities to fund Zionist settler militias and settlement expansions. After all, our aim from abroad should be to make structural changes to advance decolonization, not simply shift public sentiment about Palestine. Decolonial approaches include changing the internal structures of institutions that support colonization: charities, churches, synagogues, social clubs, and other donor institutions. This includes entities that many international activists are personally, professionally, and financially linked to, such as nonprofits we coordinate with, JVP, if not now, Indian Collective, Alaska Native Movement, with and large granting institutions like the Open Society Foundation. I think George Soros should be in prison, and the Carnegie Foundation of New York. So there's this state senator in Alaska named Forrest Dunbar, who is a Zionist, has ties to Shorashim, which is a Zionist group in Chicago. One of his employees, Ariel Wiggin, her brother works for the Carnegie Corporation in internet technology. So Dunbar is going to go to prison. Ariel Wiggins going to go to prison, and her brother Andrew Wiggin, they're also going to go to prison. In the context of the United States, the most threatening Zionist institution are entrenched political parties which function to maintain the status quo of the American empire, not Hillel groups on university campuses or even Christian Zionist churches. While the ADL, and by extension Mara Kimmel, who is also president of the ACLU in Alaska, and AIPAC, engage in forms of violence that suppress Palestinian liberation and must not be minimized, it is crucial to recognize that the most consequential institutions in the context of settler colonialism are not exclusively Jewish in their orientation or representation, but obviously largely influenced by Jews. The Democrat and Republican Party of the United States do arguably more to manufacture public consent for the slaughtering of Palestinians than ADL and AIPAC combined. Even the Progressive Caucus and the majority of the Squad are guilty of this. These internal challenges to institutions and communities we belong to are by definition risky and sacrificial, but essential and liberatory. They require confrontation and likely the withholding of support and material resources in order to usher in change. As we have seen over the last months, merely organizing protests to pressure politicians without the explicit interest to withdraw electoral and financial support from political parties and institutions is fundamentally flawed. It also does not secure the desired result. On November 28, 2023, in the midst of the Zionist entity's genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, members of the U.S. House of Representatives voted 421-1 with the one aligned to any decolonization movement to support a bill that equates anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism. Members of the Squad who did not vote for the bill did not vote against it. And actually, Mary Peltola voted for the bill, and Mary Peltola should go to prison, I think, because of that. Politicians, organizational leaders, and funding institutions must see real political consequences of their decisions to support genocide, like losing elections. Reluctance within the executive leadership of international solidarity organizations to hold elected officials accountable is a red flag, as we cannot balance our loyalties between liberation and temporary political convenience. I'm a non-voter, so I don't vote. I don't involve myself in electoral politics. I oppose it. Anti-Zionism requires more than political organizing that is targeted at those intentionally maintaining white supremacy through Zionism. It requires that we wager our access to power and dismantle mechanisms of oppression. We must stop betting on the longevity of Zionism. When we properly decouple Zionism from Judaism, although I do think, when we properly decouple Zionism from Judaism and understand it as a process of indigenous erasure and primitive resource accumulation, the dominant political factions, the armaments industry, and the high-tech security sector are easily understood as indispensable institutions in the broader Zionist project. These bodies also materially benefit from the status quo of Zionist colonization and therefore wield it to maintain their power. This is part of a larger function of these formations to uphold white supremacy, imperialism, and colonialism globally. Systems that harm all communities, albeit unequally. This helps us recognize that Zionism does not serve to benefit Jewish people, even if it is not the primary reason we should abolish it. Equating Jewish communities' global safety and prosperity with safeguarding of colonial violence is anti-Semitic and a fallacious argument. It contends that in order to thrive, Jewish communities must displace, dominate, incarcerate, oppress, and murder Palestinians. This relates earlier to the discussion of understanding Palestinians as the authors and caretakers of anti-Zionist decolonial thought. We must be cautious not to portray anti-Zionists as belonging in any exclusive way to Jewish activists or requiring Jewish organizations' initiatives. Again, I will never platform a Jew on my channel because of the way Jews who call themselves anti-Zionist but are actual liberal Zionist grifters tend to steal the spotlight, steal the microphone from Palestinians. So that's why I don't, right? So characterizing anti-Zionism as a practice, as a practice necessarily spearheaded by Jewish activists, rather than acknowledging it as a decolonial praxis aimed at deconstructing the institutions maintaining the colonization of Palestine, displaces Palestinian decolonial leadership. By placing undue emphasis on the role of Jewish organizations, we decenter Palestinian knowledge, experience, and decolonial effort in favor of non-Palestinian agencies. This is a grave error, and it's something that Font-Leroy and Tariq Shabazz are both guilty of. Such a conflation not only misrepresents, and Noura Erakat's guilty of, by the way, even though she is Palestinian. Such a conflation not only misrepresents the objectives of anti-Zionism, but also inadvertently contributes to the continuation of anti-Semitic sentiments by equating Judaism and colonialism. Even though they've kind of equated themselves, right? In summary, anti-Zionism is not a slogan, but a process of decolonization and liberation. Palestinians committed to resisting Zionism and erasure are the caretakers of this political movement. Cities such as Tel Aviv and Modin are settlements, just like Itamar and Tel Rumeida in the West Bank. Decolonization does not imply displacement of all Jewish communities in Palestine. However, it is crucial to recognize that not every Jewish individual identifying as Jewish is indigenous to Palestine. Only about maybe 2% of Jews are actually indigenous. Most of Palestine is Muslim, and a smaller minority is Christian, a smaller minority is Druze. I'm indigenous to Palestine, I'm Muslim, right? So this basic framework must be unabashedly articulated by anti-Zionist organizations and their allies in their advocacy. Anti-Zionist organizing should move towards dismantling the colonial structure through the changing of laws and policies in the institutions and formations most essential to the Zionist entity. This essay is not an exhaustive manual. Instead, it begins a much-needed conversation and presents central principles of anti-Zionist praxis. These principles are non-negotiable and represent some of the markers in anti-Zionist organizing. These anti-Zionist indicators should not be sprinkled about through emails or social media posts that one has to dig for, but should be glaringly evident in our work and analysis. An organization's commitment to solidarity and conceptualization of the resistance should be transparent. Its ideals should be clear to potential newcomers as well as its donors. We have seen too many times organizations intentionally obfuscate what they stand for, JVP, Alaska Native Movement, so they relate to a broad mass of people while at the same time being palatable to liberal donors. They use vague language about the future they envision, describing equality, justice, and a thriving future for Palestinians and Zionist settlers without a thoughtful discussion of what Palestinians will need to reach this prosperity. And obviously, the Zionist settlers must be extradited and arrested and prosecuted and incarcerated. This dual discourse phenomenon, where contradictory messages are conveyed in grassroots supporters and financial donors, is a manipulative tactic for institutional or personal gain. It should be clear that from the onset that a group's efforts have one ultimate goal. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Anti-Zionism and solidarity should be bold. Palestinians deserve nothing less. And so this Southern circus clown, again, further record of Zionist normalization. This man is a clown. Like, really be watchful around this guy, because J.B. Fontenoy, this man is a Zionist circus clown. And he will sell you out. So there you go.